Hey there everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about something a little sad. Zoids Fuzors. You know, Zoids as a franchise has really impressed me with its first two entries. The original show chronicling the adventures of Von Flyheit across the planet Z as he navigated warring factions, ancient civilizations, and monstrous mechanical beasts is genuinely enjoyable and tells a good story. New Century Zero toned down the focus on story and allowed its characters like Bid Cloud to enjoy less serious situations, while boasting impressive CG animation for the time and being actually funny. Zoids Fuzors, on the other hand, feels like Tomy looked at Zoids and sucked the fun out of it in order to cram in more toys to sell to viewers. And sure, the first two Zoids anime were also toy commercials at their core, but I'm way more willing to accept a toy commercial if it's delivered with an enjoyable story or fun action. I mean, just look at Gundam. Zoids Fuzors aired all the way back in 2003 and actually aired in America first, although the show was cancelled after 13 episodes. The Japanese broadcast took another year to reach TV, and they used that time to make some rudimentary improvements to the animation and story, but nothing that could save Fuzors. Perhaps the biggest contribution to the lack of quality in Fuzors is the fact that it was not animated by Studio Xebec, the animation house that pioneered the tech for the first two Zoid shows, and moved over to new studio Tokyo Kids. And boy, was that a bad idea. Not that they're a terrible studio, I mean, they worked on a multitude of projects, including Toward the Terra, which is at least interesting, but in the effort to make Zoids like Liger Zero closer to their actual physical models, the animation quality and background work heavily suffered. I mean, I'm pretty sure that in one of the first Zoid videos I specifically called out how great they were at integrating the 3D models with 2D backgrounds, but here these Zoids just slide around all over the place, and there are quite a few times where you can just tell they're models walking over a paint layer. Zoids Fuzors begins by introducing the audience to its main character and his Zoid partner, RD and the Liger Zero. Watching the English dub, the first thing that you'll notice if you're a fan of New Century is that RD is voiced by Brad Swale, the voice actor for Harry Chan. Swale does an admirable job as RD, but it is a little weird hearing Harry's voice for the main character, though eventually I did get used to it. Also, overall the dub is just okay. It's kind of what you would expect from a kids anime in 2003. There are a lot of stilted line deliveries and a good few moments where the voiceover does not match the animation, but the performances aren't grating. But then again, I have listened to a lot of early 2000s dubs at this point, so my tolerance might just be through the roof. RD is introduced as a bit of an overconfident troublemaker, piloting his Liger through Blue City while being chased by the Peacekeeping Bureau, which is basically the Zoids police officers. RD tries to explain that his Liger is just running off on its own, but the cops only break away when they hear that a robbery is in progress. This leaves RD to return to his home, the office of his Zoid team, Mach Storm. In Zoids Fuzors, battle teams compete to climb the Zoid rankings, much like in New Century. However, that never feels like a focus of Fuzors. Instead of being solely focused on Zoid battle as a sport, the Zoid teams in Fuzors are basically groups of mercenaries that take on various jobs on top of the arena fights. In fact, there aren't really that many arena battles in the show, which is kind of a good thing, because those moments are 100% rendered in 3D, and the CG does not look good enough to carry it. Along with RD, Mach Storm is made up of fellow pilots Sigma and Helmet. Sigma is the red-haired guy who constantly bickers with RD about who's the better pilot, and always tries to pull rank on the newbie, which almost never works. The best thing about Sigma is that whoever wrote his entry on the Zoids wiki fucking hated this guy, because they spend half the page talking about how he's a shitty Zoid fighter, but after reading their examples I can't help but agree. And then there's Helmet, a tall, broad, veteran member of Mach Storm who actually doesn't wear a helmet, but a mask. He's basically the team captain, and everyone is shown to respect his opinion. Helmet is the most aloof member of Mach Storm and has that personality trait of not speaking until he has something important to say. He's also the one that taught RD how to pilot, and there's no crazy reason he wears a mask. They just really needed a Char reference in this Zoid show. I actually find it nuts that his name in Japanese is literally just Masked Man. There is another Zoid pilot working for Mach Storm named Amy, a red-headed woman that likes to get paid. She is the least used member of the team and barely shows up for like half of the episodes. Amy is supposedly like a freelancer that helps out Mach Storm, but the show never really says that, it more implies it, which would be fine for me if she had an arc that was worth watching. Mostly Amy is just used as a target for the male characters to flirt with, mostly Sigma and RD, though it comes off as teasing RD most of the time. When I say she doesn't have an arc worth watching, I mean it too. Like, the writers just don't do anything with her. Besides one episode where she has to fight her ex-boyfriend, she does have one moment where she's shown to really like a high-ranking pilot named Rastani, and when he gets beaten, she seriously vows revenge on his behalf, and then it's never brought up again, and those characters don't interact a single time. The final two members of Mach Storm for now are Hop and Sweet. Hop is the team's Doc Toros if you sucked all the fun out of him. He's essentially their manager and constantly complains about financing and damaging the Zoids. They at least try to give him a few moments of characterization, but instead of being a lovable weirdo like Doc Toros in New Century, he just comes off as an asshole.
So, useless remote. I just changed the battery 2 days ago and you would think it would work, but for some stupid reason it never does. I wanted to show you a picture of the Alpha Zoid.
Are you serious?
I would never joke about something as demented as this, RD.
And then there's Sweet, RD's childhood friend and the resident girl character. She isn't a pilot and spends almost all of her time cooking or just hanging around the office, and sometimes she goes out on missions with the team and just sort of stands there. Sweet's biggest contribution to Zoids Fuzors is her internal monologue of, "Oh RD, I hope you're okay," whenever the main character is off doing something. You have no idea how much this character made me miss Moonbay and Lena, and I didn't even like Lena that much. We get a little exposition explaining that RD is searching for the legendary Alpha Zoid, and will do anything to find it. Which isn't really true because he never really takes proactive action until way later. Hop sends RD on a courier job. He thinks the package he's transporting is full of Zoid components, but it's actually a bunch of jewels. A hot, evil blonde lady named Sandra wants to steal these jewels, and she happens to be the leader of Mach Storm's rival team, Savage Hammer. She sends her subordinate, Blake, to confront RD in the desert, which he does happily because Blake really hates RD. The reason for this is explained later in the show, but for now he's just a huge dick voiced by Brian Drummond, which is honestly pretty fun because I just keep picturing early DBZ Vegeta. And I'm gonna be honest, Brian Drummond voicing Blake is one of the best things about this show. He loves to yell, he's good at it. Here's a couple examples.
Hold it! But then you took off anyway. And now you're going to suffer! Even without my E-shield up, their efforts are useless against me. Now, to ensure the assault weapons work!
Blake pilots the Berserk Fury. Seems kind of OP for this early in the show, but alright. Their fight is interrupted by another Savage Hammer member named Burton, who pilots the Lord Gale, which is an incredibly busy design. It's apparently supposed to be a gargoyle-type Zoid, but to me it just looks like Goldar from Power Rangers. Burton tells RD that he isn't as good a pilot as his father was, and his Liger Zero is weak. But he immediately gets smacked by a laser claw, so that shows what he knows, I guess. This was also the first mention of RD's mysterious father, who left to get Zoid milk when RD was a kid and never came home. RD's father was obsessed with finding the Alpha Zoid, but the info about him and what happened is sprinkled in very sparingly throughout the anime. During the attack, the jewels spill everywhere, and the cops show up just as Blake is trying to grab them. We see that they are tipped off by Amy, who then shows up at Mach Storm's base to take her cut. This illustrates sort of another weird thing about the structure of society on Planet Z. Teams like Savage Hammer do blatantly illegal things, and there never seems to be consequences. Like, later on, they literally steal a Zoid and forge paperwork, and no one even, looks into it.
One of the battle teams in Blue City is led by the #1 ranked Zoid pilot, Rustani. Artie is shocked to see Rustani's team lose one day due to a new Zoid technology that has arrived on the scene: fusion. Everyone is totally shocked at how strong two fused Zoids together can be, which means it's bad news when Amy bursts in and says she set up a battle with the team that just beat Rustani, the Dark Assassins. Oh, and also she told Rustani's rich dad that they would beat the fused Zoid, so if they lose they owe her a bunch of money. Thanks, Amy. Sweet and RD head to a nearby town to visit a Zoid library, hoping to find information that they can use to defeat a Fuzor. They fail to find anything, but on the way home they come across a goofy mechanic named Dan, who's enamored with the Liger Zero because he has a weak spot for the classics. Dan is added to the roster of Mach Storm when his field adjustments to the Liger immediately improve its performance right there. Sigma and Helmet are trying to hold off the Fuzor during the battle, but they're having zero luck damaging it. Amy jumps in as well, which I guess is allowed. If you're on the team, I guess you can just join the battle whenever you want. RD finally shows up, but still has no idea how to counter a fused Zoid until his Liger receives a software update from Dan with further tweaks. But before RD can shine with his powered up Liger, the fused Zoid breaks apart due to mechanical issues, and nobody gets the promised prize money. Another point to bring up with the rules of this show is that Fusors are supposed to have a heavy time limit to limit their use, but it only comes up a few times. It does feel a little cheap when RD can spend 90% of one episode in a Fusor, and then in another one he runs out of time because it's convenient to the plot. As more research is done on the new fusing technology, RD becomes more stubborn about winning without it. He says the Liger Zero can win without fusing, so why bother? But really he's just afraid of change. RD's tune changes pretty quick though when, out on a job, he's confronted by his rival Blake in his Berserk Fury. The Berserk Fury is a powerful enough Zoid on its own, but when Blake fuses with his brand new Jet Eagle, RD is in even more trouble. Just as RD is about to be finished off, a flying red Zoid called the Fire Phoenix shows up and is able to fuse with the Liger Zero. The Phoenix smacks into the Berserk Fury, which shorts out Blake's fusion, and it then flies away, and RD is impressed with its power. RD then becomes obsessed with hunting down the Phoenix and getting it to fuse. He spends all of his off time getting beat up by the Phoenix and dragging Sweet around the desert. Sandra, the leader of Savage Hammer, has Burton follow RD around. She learns about the Phoenix and challenges Mach Storm to an official battle, but the battle is really just a distraction so that RD won't be there when they destroy the Phoenix. But they don't count on how stubborn this kid is, as he's just trying to fuse with the Phoenix right up until the battle's start time. This leads to RD being around when these Zoid poachers attack the Fire Phoenix, and as a thanks for helping it out, the Phoenix finally shows up and fuses with the Liger Zero when RD arrives at the battle. Which is good timing because Blake was single-handedly trouncing both Helmet and Sigma without breaking a sweat. The Liger Zero Phoenix looks pretty cool, I wouldn't mind having a model of it, but it just isn't as cool as the armor system from New Century. The Phoenix fusion allows RD to make big flying leaps and fire lasers from its claws for a ranged attack. If you thought RD was going to get a wide range of abilities beyond the Laser Claw, well, guess again, because Strike Laser Claw is pretty much the only thing that Liger Zero has going for it throughout the entire show. Also, the dub constantly calls it Laser Claw Strike Attack, which sounds way worse. Oh yeah, then Blake runs out of power in his Zoid and just sort of leaves, giving the battle to RD and Mach Storm. Also, the Phoenix leaves after the battle as well, but RD says it's okay because he can tell it will come back. It's just sort of a funny piece of info about this series that the main character's power-up comes from a third party showing up when it's convenient. Team Mach Storm continues to add to its ranks as RD becomes friends with a young kid named Matt. Matt sees RD on a program about up-and-coming Zoid pilots and becomes totally starstruck when RD eats lunch at his hot dog stand. RD takes a liking to Matt, and we learn that Matt's dad is often out of town looking for work and that his mom is straight up dead, but
don't worry about that, because while Matt sticks around for the entire show, his parents are just never mentioned again. So he may as well be a well-meaning orphan. Artie and Matt form this sort of sibling-like friendship, and Artie even takes Matt out for a ride in the Mach Storm Zoid called the Leo Blaze. We learn throughout the episode that this evil land developer named Mr. Pendergrass wants to tear down the building where Matt lives, so Matt steals the Leo Blaze in order to defend his home.
It all ends up with Artie arriving with the Liger Zero to help, which is good because Pendergrass has hired Blake and Burton to be his goons. The rest of Mach Storm and the Phoenix show up at just the right time to stop the evil landlord's scheme, and I love how Blake tells them to get bent while running away.
Ha! I'm going to enjoy this.
Attention! Cease fire immediately!
Yeah, right. Go get bent.
Hop allows Matt to stay around the office and help out Mach Storm, and that's pretty much what he does for the rest of the series. At least he's enthusiastic about it. The show gives a little bit of backstory about Helmet when an old friend of his named Haldo hires Mach Storm to escort him through the wasteland to a place called Keeltown. Haldo says that Helmet is the only person in Mach Storm that is still around from the old days. Haldo also knew Artie's dad, which makes me a little suspicious that Helmet might also know him, or even that he was part of the original Mach Storm team, but nah. Haldo wants to see if Artie takes after his father, so he hires him for the escort job, only for the group to get ambushed in the desert. Artie trash talks the leader of the Zoid bandits, a guy named Bone, until he and a subordinate fuse their Zoids into the Brachio Tortoise. At this point, Sigma, the dude that is always shit-talking RD and saying how he's the best pilot in Mach Storm, sees the huge Zoid and is just like, yeah, fuck this, I'm out, and just leaves. Haldo tells him he can't leave while on a Mach Storm contract, and Sigma literally says he'll just quit the team then. RD continues to battle the dark forces until the Phoenix shows up and helps him overpower them. Of course, Sigma comes back at the last second to save the day. One problem though, he somehow forgot he was out of ammo, and fuck Sigma, dude, he sucks. The Liger Zero Phoenix takes out the leader of the bandits, and then they finish off the job. Haldo tells RD that he reminds him of his father, but refuses to extrapolate any further. He says that RD's dad was searching for the ultimate Zoid, the Alpha Zoid, but won't tell RD any more information because he wants the kid to forge his own path. Next up, the show actually progresses into one of the rare multi-part episodes. Fusing is becoming more and more popular and is even being called the next stage of Zoid evolution by this drunk old man on TV named Dr. Pierce. This causes an invisible Zoid to start hunting Z-fighters that use fusion, and they call him the Fuzor Hunter. It gets so bad that Chief Gummy calls off all Zoid battles while they try to hunt down the perpetrator. RD meets Dr. Pierce because Dan knows him, and of course the old scientist mentions that he knew RD's dad back in the day. What a small world, huh? Dr. Pierce is analyzing the site of the attack and hypothesizes that the perpetrator is a custom Zaberfang with a stealth field. While they take this info to the Peacekeeping Bureau, the stealth Zoid attacks Haldo's warehouse where Sigma happens to be hanging out. Sigma's Bold Guard is totaled when its core is damaged, which sets him off on an incredibly short arc where he learns to accept that it's healthy to feel sad that his Zoid is dead. The attacker calls the news and tells everyone that his goal is to prove he's the top Z-fighter on the planet without using fusion, and also that he will prove her wrong. We then cut to Amy just sort of hanging out in her apartment, and it's revealed that the pilot of the invisible Zoid is her ex-boyfriend. And it really makes him less intimidating, knowing he's literally just some guy named Keith. Dr. Pierce comes up with the idea to hit the Zoids with a different spectrum of light, making it visible on their radar. RD teams up with the Peacekeeping Bureau, and while the special light works at first, Keith says his armor can adapt. This allows him to take out everyone but RD and the Liger Zero Phoenix, and then just sorta leave. That happens a lot in this show. RD decides they should hunt down the pilot instead of the Zoid, so he ropes Dan into going to the bar with him. He figures that the pilot will show up because this bar is popular with Zoid pilots, and he'll obviously want to hear rumors about himself because he's a narcissist, I guess. RD then ends up accusing random people until Amy walks in and happens to sit with none other than Keith.
RD and Dan follow Amy out of the bar where they overhear a conversation where she tells him that he cannot be the strongest if he can only beat enemies through deception, challenging him to a battle herself. After Keith leaves, Amy lets RD and Dan know that she can tell they're just hiding in a very obvious bush. She says she has a history with the pilot of the Fuzor Hunter, but she has a plan to defeat him herself. Later, when Amy and Keith battle, we see her master plan is to insult him until he makes a mistake, which seems to work, until Keith reveals that his special armor can also project holograms. Nice ass pull, Keith. Anyway, Amy is then knocked out of the battle, and that was kinda her whole plan, so it's up to RD to overcome him. Luckily, Sigma completes his character arc and receives a new Zoid, the Leo Striker from Haldo. Sigma just happens to have special ammo that makes Keith visible, so he was actually helpful for once. RD then cuts off the Zaberfang's legs, and the story arc comes to an end with Amy punching Keith in the face. The next important character to be set up is a man with a history with Mach Storm. One day, a guy named Marvis breaks out of prison and immediately tracks down his old friend Helmet, who happens to be visiting the grave of another old friend. We learn that Marvis apparently murdered someone with his Zoid before leaving with a Shadow Fox, eventually ending up in prison, until now. Marvis has a grudge against Helmet, who was the one to track and capture him, and wants to become the #1 Zoid fighter just like every other freak out there. So Marvis challenges Mach Storm to a battle, but Helmet isn't the only member of Mach Storm with a relationship to Marvis, as Sigma used to really look up to him and was even trained in the ways of Zoid piloting by Marvis. When Mach Storm arrives at the showdown, Marvis reveals that he isn't playing fair and has a bunch of other Zoids on his side. Of course, now is the perfect moment for Sigma's new Zoid to reveal it is compatible with Helmet's Command Wolf for fusion. So, the two combine to create the Command Striker, which is strong enough to take on all of Marvis's Zoids, and even destroy the Shadow Fox. Marvis's voice actor is really chewing the scenery here. It's actually kinda great.
Can you feel the heat? And I'm only getting started, Helmet. But for now, I must take my leave and finish you up later!
But just when it looks like he's going to be captured, he sets off a flare and escapes on an airborne Zoid. A week goes by with everyone on the lookout for Marvis, and while the PKB wants to flush the evil dude out, Mach Storm returns to business as usual. RD is hired by a girl named Tracy. Tracy is a television personality that works for the Zoids Battle Commission on a highlights show, essentially, and she's taken a liking to RD ever since he announced that he wants to be the #1 Zoid fighter. So she hires him to participate in a battle royale with a bunch of other top Zoid pilots. The payout is good enough that Hop agrees to let RD take part despite his relatively small amount of experience. Little does RD know that the other members of the Battle Royal decide to meet in secret and come up with a plan to destroy the Liger Zero Phoenix to keep it from becoming too powerful. As soon as the battle begins, everyone follows Rastani's lead and gangs up on RD. At first it looks like there's no way for RD to win, but after hearing some encouraging words from Sweet, the Liger Zero Phoenix gets ultra-powered and takes everyone out. I did laugh at this guy's line here.
Man, I guess Rastani was right about the power of fusers. I'm an idiot!
It isn't just Rastani and the other high-ranking fighters that want to get rid of the Zero Phoenix, because of course, Sandra and Savage Hammer are constantly trying to destroy RD as well. She hires a group of mercenaries called the Crushers, led by a man named Watt, who pilots a cool-ass Genosaurer. Blake, believing that he should be the one to take out RD, haughtily leaves. Meanwhile, Mach Storm has actually gotten into some hot water because RD has promised Matt that he can take the Zoid license test. Blue City begins to hate on Mach Storm because everyone believes they're going to let Matt basically be a child soldier on their roster. But hey man, that seems more like a problem with the system not having an age restriction. Hop tells RD the reputational hit is too much and will lose them vital work, so RD comes up with the plan of telling Matt that he can only be ready for the license exam once he can beat RD in battle. So Matt goes to that Zoid fighter bar and asks for anyone who can train him. At first he asks Blake, who tells him to stay focused and just leaves. very aloof. But then Matt is approached by Watt's team, who knows he's from Mach Storm, so they take him back to Watt's creepy warehouse, which happens to be a Zoid battle simulator. When the battle between Matt and RD finally comes, Watt and Vulcan reveal their true evil plan, fusing the entire team of Zoids together into the huge and powerful Matrix Dragon. Matt is ejected from the beast, leaving his Leo Blaze in the clutches of Watt and the other evildoers. While RD tries to fend them off, he's just blasted to the ground and the Liger Zero is heavily damaged. RD loses the battle. Good thing they didn't just destroy the Liger right there and instead leave it to be repaired to fight another day. This leads to Amy barging into Savage Hammer's office to demand that they return the Leo Blaze to Mach Storm. But Sandra has forged paperwork saying that the Leo Blaze actually belongs to them, but they will sell it back for 10 times the price. Gee, now would be a great time to personally know the chief of the Peacekeeping Bureau who could investigate that obviously forged paperwork pertaining to a Zoid that everyone knows belongs to Mach Storm. Oh, no, they don't do that. They just throw their arms up in the air and do nothing instead? Alright then. RD ignores everyone's advice and storms into Savage Hammer's office, demanding that they have another battle to settle things. This leads to the Crushers and Blake getting into an argument, and when Vulcan tries to punch Blake, he gets tossed because Blake doesn't fuck around. Helmet and RD study the Matrix Dragon and decide that its joints are the weakest part of its armor, leaving RD to train intensively at high G-forces in order to increase his tolerance for high-speed maneuvers. When the day of the battle comes, RD is now able to fly around with the Fire Phoenix and do cool corkscrew moves. While fighting the Crushers, Blake and Burton, the Command Striker and Koning Wolf are both knocked away, and then they all start fighting each other to see who will be the one to take out RD. The Matrix Dragon looks like it's going to win the day with its immense power, but as soon as it's about to strike the final blow on both Blake and RD, a huge laser is fired from a nearby hillside. When RD looks up to see who his savior is, it appears to be a badass-looking Liger that mysteriously flees. This is where the seeds of the overarching plot are finally sown, as we see some mysterious people watching footage of the newly arrived Zoid, the Energy Liger. Man, it only took like 14 episodes, but we finally have a villain moving things behind the scenes. RD and Dan take the battle data to Dr. Pierce, who finds that it does not match anything in the Zoids database. Meanwhile, Blake is now even more obsessed with destroying RD and the Liger Zero, but with the Berserk Fury destroyed, he has to rely on more primitive methods. A huge fucking gun. RD and the others end up taking a job to round up a herd of Zoids, but RD is distracted by his yearning to go hunt down the Energy Liger, as he believes it to be the mythical Alpha Zoid that his father was looking for. It's just his luck that the Energy Liger is hanging out around the herd of Zoids, but of course RD's attempt to capture the Zoid is interrupted by Blake. His big gun does make the Liger take off, but does nothing to damage it. Blake has this kid that he's friends with named Luke, and I haven't really mentioned him yet because he hasn't really done anything other than stand around and wear a weird-looking romper, but he shows up and gives Blake a new Zoid which has been sourced by Sandra, the Guy Ricky Fury. The Guy Ricky is basically an improved Berserk Fury with a more powerful particle cannon. When Blake gets into it, he's amazed by its power and exclaims, "This Zoid has a mind of its own!" Yeah, remember when they all did? Like, that was the whole thing? Blake's new Zoid is built specifically to counter the power of fusers like the Liger Phoenix, so when RD attacks, Blake is easily able to fend him off. The Liger unfuses and Blake blows up the Fire Phoenix, which turns into a big flaming bird and flies off into the sky. Initially, I thought this meant it was going to come back in some form, like a phoenix, but it just sort of dies here, leaving RD to deal with the loss of one of his Zoids, and a reduction in his power. While RD remains bright and cheery on the outside, the guy is really struggling and blaming himself for the loss of Fire Phoenix. This manifests as RD being super annoying to literally everyone on the team. Like, Sigma and RD always bicker, but it gets so bad that Helmet actually has to tell them both to shut the fuck up for 10 seconds so he can think. RD overcompensates by being way too confident, leading to Mach Storm totally messing up an escort job, and RD taking it incredibly hard.
Sweet begins to worry when RD doesn't return to the office for 3 days straight. He's out in the forest doing some soul searching when he comes across a kid named Venus who appears to have the ability to understand the feelings of Zoids. She tells him that the Liger Zero is also sad about losing the Phoenix and leads RD deeper into the forest where they come across Blake and his guy Ricky. Blake obviously challenges RD to a battle, but he turns and runs, too afraid at the possibility of losing another Zoid. Dan and Matt go out looking for RD, but end up coming across a fossilized Zoid that gives off the same energy signature as the Fire Phoenix. Burton shows up and decides to destroy the fossil, and then he totally forgets about that and goes to fight with RD and Blake instead. It's a really weirdly paced episode. Good thing that Venus telling RD to fight for his Zoid partner is enough to power up the guy so he can defeat Burton in one attack. Blake is still insistent on battling RD though, causing Venus to pray for the fossil to be revived. Matt hears this in his head and gets the idea to run up to the fossil and hit its computer with a rock, which revives the entire Zoid for some reason. The newly revived Jet Falcon is very luckily a compatible Fuzor with the Liger Zero, allowing RD to win in a beam struggle with the guy Ricky. RD is then happy he won't be alone anymore, and they drop Venus off, never to be seen again. Though she does leave behind a feather, so I guess she's like the spirit of the Fire Phoenix. It's never brought up again, like a single time. RD puts his new Fuzor form and its ability to fly for extended periods of time to the test when the mayor's flying Whale King is taken over by criminals. This episode is pretty fun because it's at least a little bit different, but it's all mostly filler. We do get a scene with the mysterious main bad guy watching RD from afar, and the reveal that Blake's partner and only friend Luke is actually a double agent for the big bad. The reveal that Luke is going to turn on Blake is kind of ruined by the fact that the dub gets his name wrong, though. The dub literally calls him Rick in this scene, and it isn't his real name, like he's not undercover or anything, because they go back to calling him Luke for the rest of the show, so I can only conclude that the show got the name of its own character wrong, which is both funny and sad at the same time.
I must keep an eye on my pet Zoid and RD because my entire plan relies on it. Isn't that right, Rick?
Bitch, who the fuck is Rick? I guess it is to be expected because consistency is not Zoids Fuzor's strong suit. The next episode deals with the number one Zoid pilot, Rustani, being fired from his team by the owner. Turns out his rich daddy was bankrolling the Black Impact team, but now his brother Renaud has taken over and has decided to replace everyone with AI-controlled Zoids called Chimera drones. Rustani is like, I can't beat you, but RD sure can. And then when the Black Impact team challenges Mach Storm to a battle, the whole team all tell RD he can't win against Rustani, which is pretty rude because RD won a fucking 4v1 against Rustani and his team of losers during that battle royale not too long ago. I guess they forgot about that. But when Mach Storm learns that Black Impact is now full of unmanned Zoids, RD gets mad. No one spits on the art of Zoid battle around my boy RD. Rustani even meets with him to warn him and shows him pictures of his wrecked Blade Liger. Also, Rustani and RD are cool with each other now. Like, say what you will about our main character, but he doesn't hold a grudge. I mean, he doesn't really even seem to hate Blake that much, despite Blake constantly trying to literally kill him. So the exhibition battle begins with RD fusing into the Liger Falcon. The Chimera drones see this and match his energy by all fusing together into the immensely powerful Chimera Dragon that quickly becomes way too much for Renaud to control. The huge beast busts out of the arena and begins to run amok in Blue City. RD shows up to help the PKB defeat the dragon, which unfuses once it's faced with large numbers, allowing them to defeat it. And once again, the mysterious bad guy watches from the shadows. The big bad decides to take a more active role in the demise of our main characters when he cryptically hires a squad of mercenaries to take out both Blake and RD. For what it's worth, the guys he hires are actually kind of fun characters that stick around until the end. They are basically these weird Viking dudes that are said to come from a faraway land that shuns most technology. For instance, while walking around Blue City, they cause a big traffic jam because they don't know what a traffic light or cars are, but they do know what Zoids are, so I mean that's good, I guess. The group is led by the boisterous and bearded Vareth.
who is accompanied by his subordinates Saber and Dart. So after they leave a note with a challenge for Blake, they go out and cause trouble, eventually being caught by the cops. Vareth name drops RD, and Chief Gummy is like, "Okay, well, RD annoys me, so I guess I'll just drop you off at his house."
The group is released under Mach Storm's supervision and then proceed to eat all of the team's food before leaving. Vareth leaves behind the same note he left to challenge Blake, which leads to both him and RD showing up at the same time for the challenge. RD ends up fighting Vareth and Dart, but has a hard time keeping up with their speed. That is until the Energy Liger shows up for 2 seconds to fire a laser. Look, I know I have to keep repeating that characters or Zoids just show up and then run away, but it happens like every episode. In the moment of reprieve, the Jet Falcon shows up, allowing RD to fuse with it and overcome Vareth's tactics. Vareth's team decides to regroup, so they trick RD by charging up an ultimate attack before just running away. Blake swears that he will unlock the true power of the Guy Ricky Fury, taking a job to hunt some iron Kongs in the wilderness that Mach Storm also just so happens to take. While hunting the Kongs in the highlands, the team comes across a large walled estate and decides to ask the owner if he's seen a pack of 30-foot-tall metal gorillas parading around the forest. The owner of the estate just so happens to be the shadowy evil man that's been pulling the strings behind the scenes, Alpha Richter. Alpha says he doesn't know anything about any iron Kongs in the area, but he does go on about how packs of wolves have alphas, which is wrong, but Alpha Richter isn't that smart, so I guess it's okay. But right before Alpha Richter is about to ask them to subscribe to his Elon Musk fan account on TikTok, they're interrupted by Blake battling the Energy Liger nearby. Blake is actually doing pretty well in his battle against the Energy Liger, considering he didn't even come prepared for it. He mostly is just trying to improve his own skills and searching for a partner that could fuse with his guy Ricky. But when the two seem to be in a stalemate, 2 new support Zoids called the Evo Flyers show up. These Zoids are specifically designed to support the Energy Liger, being able to transform to a ground mode to cover its escape. The battle between the Evo Zoids and Blake is probably the most fun fight in the entire show, mostly because they let Brian Drummond go crazy in the voice booth. After defeating them, Blake scans them to find that they are compatible fusers with the Guy Ricky, combining them all into the Guy Ricky Death Droid. What a name. Blake does not understand why his Zoid is so powerful, or why it can fuse with these strange Zoids that just sort of show up. While he has a flashback of Luke giving it to him, we get a reminder that Luke is working for Alpha Richter, and is actually his son. So now Alpha Richter sets his plan into motion, which is being an evil land developer, essentially. There's a Phantom Zoid that is attacking new construction areas within the city, and we also see that a lot of these Zoid pilots are pretty disgruntled because the city is planning to tear down the Zoid arena. Therefore, all Zoid pilots are now suspects who could be piloting the Phantom Zoid. Mach Storm meets with Haldo during all of this, who introduces them to a woman named Rebecca, and boy do I have some problems with this character. For one, Rebecca looks exactly like Amy with a hat and sunglasses on, and she and Amy are never seen in the same place. Amy is such a nothing character that my brain was literally coming up with storylines to make her more interesting while watching the show, I guess, because Rebecca actually turns out to be Alpha Richter's assistant in disguise. But why bother with a disguise while simultaneously using your real name? In fact, why bother with the disguise when no one even knows who the hell you are to begin with? Rebecca tells the group that the person piloting the Phantom Zoid is none other than RD's rival Blake. RD says that Blake wouldn't do that, but I do not know why RD thinks that when the guy has done nothing but try to kill him for 21 episodes. We as the audience know that Blake is not responsible because we see him hanging out at Savage Hammer's office while all this is happening. Finally, Blake's motivation for hating RD is revealed in a flashback where he and RD battled, and it ended with RD totaling his old Zoid. Also, the show makes another mistake here where it refers to Blake's old dead Zoid as a Guy Ricky when we can plainly see that it's a Genosaur, which really doesn't make any sense to make that mistake because we'll learn later that there's only one Guy Ricky Fury, like it's a completely unique Zoid, so I don't know. Blake hears something in the hangar and sees Luke stealing the Guy Ricky. Blake chases Luke until he spots him being attacked by Vareth's crew, who I guess have decided to betray Alpha because they don't like him. Blake attacks them so they don't harm Luke, but has a hard time dealing with Vareth and Saber because they can teleport now. Meanwhile, Dart goes to Mach Storm's headquarters to tell them he knows who is piloting the Phantom Zoid, and ask for their help, and to the show's credit, Dart cutting their door down super casually instead of opening it did get a good laugh out of me.
Dart, what are you doing here?
Yeah, nice entrance, pal. I hope you're gonna pay for that door.
Vareth finally explains to Blake that they're just trying to find information on a group known as Richter Scale, but the Phantom Zoid shows up and attacks them. RD finally arrives and they all try to stop it from attacking the nearby city, though Blake doesn't want Luke to get hurt and believes he's being mind controlled. Imagine being Alpha Richter and you're such a piece of shit that you have to mind control your own son so he spends time with you. They notice that there's this weird Zoid flying around and RD attacks it, thinking that it might be the person controlling Luke, which was a good guess because we see that the one responsible is Rebecca, who's forced to retrieve Luke and flee. We also see that Chief Gummy is being pressured to step down from his position at the Peacekeeping Bureau because of all the chaos, which seems to be all according to Alpha Richter's plan. To make matters even worse for Gummy, somebody sabotages his Zoid, the Gojulus Giga, and causes it to go on a rampage through Blue City with him inside. The city has recently made the decision to replace a bunch of PKB Zoids with Chimera drones, even after the incident with the Chimera Dragon, which they're planning on using to blow up Gummy to pieces. RD shows up to try to help, and then even Blake arrives on the scene because he believes Richter Scale to be behind whatever is happening. But we see in the end that it's Gummy's connection to his Zoid and his belief in it that gets it back under control just in time. However, as a result of all the damage, he is fired from his job as chief and demoted down to a traffic cop. The Zoid's computer is taken to be scanned by Dr. Pierce, and he finds that it was tampered with by none other than Helmet. Of course, we know that Helmet has been framed, but he's arrested and taken in for questioning. RD tries to go talk to his friends at the PKB, only to be thrown out, and we find out that the new chief of the Bureau is none other than the dastardly Marvis. But who would appoint an escaped murderer as the new chief? Well, it turns out that Alpha Richter has been made the new mayor of Blue City, which was apparently something he was doing in the background this whole time, which also doesn't make sense because that episode I talked about a little bit ago where the mayor had a flying whale king, they said that that was the mayor's inauguration party, and the mayor wasn't Alpha Richter in that episode, so you don't have an inauguration party when you lose a race, I would presume. So they just said fuck it, and I guess they had, that mayor was so bad he was only mayor for a month and a half, and then they elected megalomaniacal giant robot Elon Musk instead. And not only is Helmet arrested, but Mach Storm is ordered to disband because of the investigation, with Hop, Amy, and Sigma also being hauled off to jail. Alpha does not hide his megalomania from the people who just elected him, as he basically declares Zoid battles illegal and rounds up everyone's Zoids with Chimera drones. He also starts arresting all known Zoid pilots. This includes Sandra and Savage Hammer, who we see talking to Dr. Pierce. Pierce reveals that he has actually been working with Alpha Richter the entire time, and he was the one who planted the evidence against Helmet. He also drops the info that the reason Sandra hates Mach Storm and fuels Blake's rivalry with RD so much is that she wants revenge against Helmet, who she believes is responsible for her father's death. Sandra calls Alpha, and we learn that she is his half-sister, and their father helped fund the startup of Savage Hammer. However, Alpha says she no longer fits into his plans, and as a result, all of Sandra's business contacts cut her off. And Burton is also revealed to be working for Alpha, so the only person left to stick around with her is the one she's been manipulating all along, Blake. She tells Blake that she's shutting down Savage Hammer, and that it actually wasn't RD's fault that his old Zoid was destroyed, but hers. She actually sabotaged his Genosaur in order to fuel a hatred of Mach Storm. RD goes to confront Alpha Richter since he's basically out of options, and is joined by Gummy, who's fed up with watching this guy ruin his town. However, Alpha Richter just laughs maniacally because everything is according to his plan, and he unveils what he believes to be the true Alpha Zoid, the Seismosaurus.
The Seismo is essentially just a huge walking platform for its main weapon, the focused charged particle cannon. As is Zoid's tradition, the main bad guy is going to have a Zoid with a giant beam cannon on it. Gummy tells RD to run off and help Helmet while he holds off the Seismosaurus, which pretty much just immediately destroys the Goldulus. Also, RD is trapped on the highway by a bunch of Chimera drones, despite the fact that the Liger Falcon can fly. But hey, luckily the Energy Liger briefly appears to save RD's ass. What a guy, huh? As soon as RD is saved from the drones, he rushes over to the prison and busts through the wall, releasing his teammates. All the other falsely arrested Zoid pilots escape and take their captured Zoids right from the hangar. Everyone splits up, with Mach Storm ending up at the old Zoid arena and being surrounded by Chimera drones. The Energy Liger shows up once more to destroy the drones, but this time it finally isn't getting away so easily. RD chases after the Zoid until Dr. Pierce appears in a big modified Iron Kong. He fuses it with the Energy Liger to create his ultimate fuser, the Energy Ray Liger. Pierce says that while he was working for Alpha Richter, he now wants revenge on Richter Scale for betraying him. Pierce says RD is just a pawn in his plan, but now he's in the way, so Pierce has decided to kill him. Meanwhile, we see Alpha explain his plan, Operation Genesis, to Burton. Basically, both the Guy Ritchie Fury and the Energy Liger are branches of this project to create the ultimate legendary Zoid. The Guy Ritchie is an evolved and modified Berserk Fury, while the Energy Liger is based on the Liger Zero. Alpha Richter ultimately decided that the Guy Ritchie was the true ultimate Zoid and cut off Dr. Pierce's development on the Energy Liger, which caused him to get all pissed and go rogue. So that's why Luke gave Blake the Guy Ritchie in the first place, and why the Evo Zoids just happened to show up to help. It's all been part of Alpha Richter's plan to power up the Guy Ritchie. And then at some point, Alpha also stopped giving a shit about the Guy Ritchie because he got the Seismosaurus and decided that was the ultimate Zoid. We don't see that happen, though. While RD is stunned by the admission from Dr. Pierce, Blake arrives to take up the fight, demanding that the doctor tell him where Luke is. RD remembers his father leaving when he was just a kid, and along with that, all his battles have been data collection opportunities for Pierce and the Energy Liger. But RD realizes that if the Energy Liger isn't the legendary Zoid his father was looking for, that means it's still out there somewhere. He then gets a big attack in on the Doctor, and the Energy Liger explodes. Somehow Pierce is still alive though, which is unfortunate. Alpha is ordering Burton to hunt down Mach Storm and kill them, and for Marvis to crack down on the protesting citizens of Blue City. The rescued Zoid pilots form a resistance against Alpha Richter, but Rebecca infiltrates their ranks and sabotages a bunch of their Zoids. So when Burton shows up with a bunch of Chimera drones at their base, he revels in the moment. He sees Sandra there and tells her that it wasn't actually Helmet who killed her dad. That was all a lie from Marvis, but why would you believe the convicted murdering liar and never even ask Helmet what happened is beyond me, but I guess Sandra is all good now, that story arc is over. RD and Blake defeat Burton, and Rebecca is captured by the Resistance, but all of Burton's actions were really only intended to buy Alpha time. Alpha Richter shows up in his new ultimate Zoid, the Berserk Seismosaurus. He blows both Blake and RD away with a big laser and starts blasting the Resistance base. And if that wasn't bad enough, Luke is stuck inside. Oh no! Alpha reveals Luke is being mind-controlled inside the Berserk Seismosaurus, which really just serves to piss off Blake even more. Alpha Richter then starts going on this megalomaniacal rant about taking over the world, which causes RD to call him a freak. Alpha Richter fires the Berserk Seismo's main cannon, but Blake's cries for help cause Luke to snap out of it and stop firing, allowing him and RD to go on the defensive. Offensive. The duo is able to damage the Seismosaurus, but Blake's Guy Ritchie is taken out in the process, leaving everything to RD. RD has this back and forth with Alpha where he says that Alpha stands for greed and he stands for justice, so he will win. It's very optimistic. But RD's connection with the Liger Falcon powers it up, and when he goes in for an attack, he's surrounded by a flaming aura. The spirit of the Fire Phoenix has returned to help. The Seismosaurus shoots at RD, but nothing can damage him, and he even goes right through its main cannon, blasting through the Zoid and making it explode. Luckily Luke was ejected from it earlier, I guess. Gummy shows up and arrests Alpha, who also somehow survived that. Artie exits the Liger Zero and tells Sweet and Matt that he's finally found the legendary Zoid, and it's been his partner all along. And thus ends Zoids Fuzors, despite Hop's voiceover at the end ensuring us that Artie's adventures will continue. They never did. Zoids Fuzors is probably the worst show that I've featured on the channel. I mean, it's just so boring and there's not really any substance to it, which is very disappointing after Chaotic Century and New Century. On top of that, 3D is a noticeable drop in quality from the previous shows, and about a third of the way in, you'll really start noticing the reuse of animation is just in every episode. There was way less talk about the combat in this show when compared to the other ones, because so much of the time they literally just stand there while missiles hit them, and they play a canned animation. So yeah, I really cannot recommend that you watch Zoids Fuzors unless you have seen every other Zoid show and just want to say you've seen them all. If I wasn't watching this series for a video, I would have dropped it before the halfway point. The next Zoid show is Zoids Genesis, which I've heard incorporates a lot more adventure elements, similar to a classic shonen show, and it's also 50 episodes long, so while I'm not expecting anything revolutionary, I do hope that it is at least interesting. Thank you for watching today, and if you made it this far into the video, congratulations, because you just found your Fuzor partner. It's whatever you're sitting on right now, and now it's part of your body forever. Have a good day! Hey there everybody, and welcome to today's end card. As always, let me thank my channel members, aka Batosai, Azure Windress, Brian Sanchez, Chris Goodnow, D. Gonzalez, Daniel Johnson, Dane O'Connor, Good Apollo, Grim07, Harmonious, Hidden Insanity, Jessica Solberg, Jay Lamb, Joe Castellanos, Joe Cavazos, Johnny G, Canto 20, MB, McLean Nugent, Michael Lewis, Rother the Paladin, Sin Ryuki, The Crawl, Video Gamer 75, Zach Jones, and Zappa the Ace. Thank you all so much for throwing me a couple of bucks. Enjoying the content enough to be channel members. I do really appreciate it, especially on days like today where I upload a video of, like I said, probably the worst show I've watched for the channel. Zoids Fuzors just really has nothing going for it when you compare it to any of the other Zoid shows. And yeah, like I said in the video, I really can't recommend it to anyone who's not just watching all of the Zoid shows to say they watched all the Zoid shows. If you're doing that, then you're going to have to. But otherwise, there's not much here that I found to be salvageable or really enjoyable. The voice acting is kind of fun. There's a couple jokes that are fun, but other than that, it's just really boring. Anyway, next for Zoids would be Zoids Genesis, which I'm not going to hop on watching right away, because I'm currently watching a 50 episode long show to be done over the summer, so Zoids Genesis being 50 episodes long, I'll probably do that in the fall. So if you're looking for more Zoids, you can watch the previous Zoids series that I've reviewed, because I've done them all up to Fuzors, but in the future, it's probably going to be a few months before we get to Genesis. Coming up, though, is going to be Transformers Armada. We're doing Gunsmith Cats Flag and Gundam Build Divers Re-Rise, which is really good. And then also in the Gundam Retrospective, we'll be hitting up Gundam Hathaway. So, that's your look into what's coming up on the channel soon. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. And I'll see you again soon.